America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and you are watching the Black Athenians. Now, today is the Endorsement Show. We fixed our technical difficulties, but technical difficulties cost money. So if you like anything I'm doing, please go to thefunkyacademic.com and join for, $5, $15, or $50 a month because, like I said, technical difficulties cost money. Plus, I got Matthew a microphone. Say hi, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm filling in for Sin today on sort of like co-host production Dewey, and it'll be a good show. It'll be a real good show.
I think it's going to be a fantastic show. But even when Sin is here, I got Matthew a microphone, so you're going to hear a lot more from Matthew, which is good. All right, so we're going to talk about your ballot. If you've already done the early ballot thing, it's, good for you. If you're voting on November 6th, then you are going to watch this show because not only am I going to tell you whom to vote for, and yeah, I know it's rude. People say you shouldn't tell people who to vote for. You should just tell them to vote. No, I'm going to tell you who to vote for, and even better than that, I'm going to tell you why to vote for them and not the other person, which I think is more important because it's not just about this election, because would you believe we have yet another election in 2 years, in 2020. So I'm trying to build wisdom. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build wisdom so we can get our situation a little bit better than it has been previously. So first things first, Matthew, hit the opening. Go.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
So people want me to talk about Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp, so let's just talk about Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. Stacey Abrams, I don't know if I have a picture of Kemp too, but could you give me some pictures, Matthew? Mm-hmm. Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp are the two people running for Georgia governor. Stacey Abrams, I've met with her one-on-one a few times. I actually have a picture of her and I one-on-one. So if she actually becomes governor, I just found on my iPad, if she actually becomes governor, I get to have one of those pictures of I knew her back when, which is important. I met Ocasio-Cortez over in New York, the woman who's going to be Congresswoman from New York, last year, and I didn't take a picture. Now I feel a little bit like, I should have taken a picture. Yeah. So anyway, Stacey Abrams and I, we had a few tete-a-tete, Negro to Negro about what's going to happen if she becomes governor, and I was impressed by her intelligence, impressed by her policy knowledge, little not impressed by her way of campaigning, because if you haven't noticed, she's got policy for all of the other interest groups that come for her, the LGBT community, the immigration community. She's got very concrete plans for how she feels about ICE. When you talk to her about black people, she tells you a lot one-on-one, but when she talks to other people, she doesn't mention black people. We get a personal story, and I know she's got a great personal story, and maybe she has got some stuff to say publicly about criminal justice reform, which I appreciate, but we're more than just not criminals. We actually are people in the United States who actually want to make moves. So I wanted to talk about not only black people, I want to talk about organized labor, and preferably talk about organized labor and black people in the same kind of paragraph. So, because if you haven't noticed, the black problem is a labor problem since we were brought over here as labor. It's always been a labor problem. That's why MLK died when he started to turn the civil rights struggle into a labor struggle, because that's what it's always going to be. That's until we get the labor right, until we pay black labor, black lives don't matter. Make no mistake, until we pay black labor, black lives don't matter. I'm going to do another show on that probably in a few weeks. But the black struggle is a labor struggle. So I'm going to need you talking about black people or labor if you're going to be, I'm going to need you, if you're going to be a governor who's going to steer public policy to making black communities whole. It's not enough just to talk about your personal struggle as, a black woman going through Yale and Spelman and all of these great schools, and you're very smart. She's very smart, very competent. I'm going to need her to make the electorate as smart and competent as she is by drilling home, campaigning on, Georgia's a third black. And let's be honest, if you're black and going to the polls, you're probably going to be voting for Stacey Abrams for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to need her to actually advocate for things that'll make black communities whole, not just be the president for everybody. Because the idea is that, like, well, she's got to campaign the way she's going to campaign, but when she gets in, she'll be governing for us. Yeah, that's what we thought about Obama. And Matthew, how did that work out for us?
It did not work out very well. It did not work out at all. In fact, it probably got a little bit worse under Obama than it did. Probably in a while.
Well, let's be honest. Like, black people still got kicked out of their homes, and white bankers still got paid under Obama. So like that it didn't. Just assuming that they're going to hook us up later, although they won't campaign on it, is not good politics.
He also confused a lot of the racial boundaries. He said there was only one America, but the wealth gap says otherwise.
Right, wealth gap says, and you're saying, what do you mean about the wealth gap saying otherwise? Matthew, find the clip.
The wealth clip.
The wealth clip. In this wealth clip, we're going to find out. It turns out that the median white household is worth about, we make a few adjustments, is worth about $110,000, and the median black household is worth about $1,700. So $110,000, $1,700. These numbers are probably crunched from Edward Wolf's work. He's been doing wealth economics, racialized wealth economics at NYU for like 30 years. So the numbers are legit. Edward Wolf, you can look it up. And what's important is they're picked up by Ford. They have projections. And when one line is projected to go up and the other line is projected to go down, that means we are not one America. Like, that's by definition, like, we are not one America. And that's important to get right. Because if we were one America, we'd at least be trending the same ways. So we're not trending the same ways, and I'm going to need, and it's for political reasons, and I'm going to need my endorsed candidates to actually make that whole. Stacey Abrams says she has plans to make that whole, but she's not going to release those plans until like February if she's elected. And I'm just not okay with that. Although, because here's the deal. I'm seeing lots of Kemp flyers around and Stacey Abrams flyers, and I'm seeing too extreme for Stacey. Can you give me some of the too extreme for Georgia? They're calling Stacey Abrams too extreme for Georgia. And if you listen to the last debate, she is not too extreme for Georgia. She is just fine. The way she debates is very competent, and the policies she espouses are just like middle of the road. So is it up?
There's a Karen Handel too extreme for Georgia.
Try it should be on the same. Keep looking. Okay. Stacey Abrams, keep looking. All right, so there's a so the campaign is now Stacey Abrams is too extreme for Georgia. Look, if they were going to tar you, and let's be honest, Stacey, if you're watching, they were always going to come at you for being too extreme for Georgia. I say you actually be too extreme, like, make people uncomfortable with your policy. Make people uncomfortable, because they're going to get at you anyway for this. You might as well at least, if you're going to do the time, sometimes it pays to do the crime. So start talking about the history of racialized violence and how that skewed the political economy of Georgia and how there's a reason why black people are poor and at a community level. At a racialized community level. And black people are a third of Georgia, so it's okay if you can talk about black people. You don't have to talk about, all people or people of color. You can say black people, because black people are a third of Georgia. And let's be honest, if you win, it's only going to be with 45 or 40% of white people anyway. All the black people are going to vote for you. So it's okay to talk about us.
It's important to educate them on the fact that the racial problem is our problem. It's not something that black people by themselves can solve. We need white people to accommodate and contribute to the problem.
Georgia has a race problem, a racialized wealth problem, and as the governor of Georgia, I need you to do justice. Not give privileges to black people, but to do justice to black people, which includes the justice claims of black people. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that, because we're not doing that well in Georgia. And the reasons are politically and historically grounded. So it's okay if you use this campaign to educate Georgians about black people. Like I said, we are a third of black people, a third of people in Georgia. So they're going to tell you for being too extreme for Georgia. I say you at least actually push the electorate and create the electorate that can not only elect a black woman governor, but actually elect a black woman governor who's talking about justice for the people of Georgia, which includes the third of Georgia, which is black. And I'm talking about economic justice, not just criminal justice. It's okay that you talk about like not locking up as much of us as like previous administrations have made a policy of doing. I need you to talk about jobs and because I know you know everything that you need to know because I know the quality of your mind. And all the information's there. You just don't think that the regular Georgians can take it. So the idea that there's a secret plan to help black people, that's what Republicans are assuming anyway. So you might as well, if you actually have one, make it open and say like, this is my plan to help black people in Georgia. This is why I need to have a plan. Make the case. Make the case. Talk about the plan. Talk about the history of terrorism. Talk about the reasons we're not in the Georgia political economy and all this great new money that's coming in through Hollywood productions and not Hollywood, Atlanta productions apparently needs to flow through black people, and we need to make an intentional effort to do so, and why we can't just allow the free market, which for the history of Georgia was governed by white supremacy, take over like the new industries that are coming in here. We need black people behind those cameras. We need black people behind those cameras. We need black people being grips and best boys and doing lighting and having their own little lighting production companies that contract with bigger production companies. We need black people doing mic work and doing all that stuff. Pretty much if there's like a job in the film industry, I want black people doing it. Like not, and including producer and director and writer, but also like prop guy and set designer and script doctor.
And the wages for those jobs aren't nothing too. They pay a fair amount. They pay a fair amount.
They pay a fair amount, and like a lot of those jobs are unionized. So once again, labor politics and racial politics can go together in the quality of political leader we need as black people in Georgia, if we're serious about making black people whole. But I get the sense that even Democrats aren't serious about actually making black people whole. And I know this because as much as we talk about voting rights and voter purging and like the importance of voting, you have to know that the reason Democrats want black people to vote is because we vote for Democrats. If black people voted Republicans, it wouldn't matter how disenfranchised we were. Democrats wouldn't say anything about it because they want us to vote. And I just worry that black people in Georgia, both in the political economy, both in the politics side of the political economy and the economic side of the political economy, end up being natural resources for white people. For example, if you go to a black school and you see a white teacher, you got to understand that you have to wonder if that white teacher is using those black pupils as like a natural resource to like exploit a paycheck in order to send their kids to like a private school. That's a thing. So you have to understand that all of these white people, we need to teach them how to be better allies, which includes teaching them how to do justice by black people and not just like extract them for a paycheck or an elected office. Because apparently all these down-ballot Democrats who I'm about to talk about are expecting Stacey Abrams to carry them. I think she's going to have a hard enough time carrying herself. I wish some of these down-ballot Democrats actually did some more hustling for her. But I'm voting for Stacey Abrams because I think she's going to be a better governor than Brian Kemp. I hope, honestly, and there's another cat by the name of Andrew Gilliam who's running for governor in Florida. I hope either Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gilliam win, or Stacey Abrams wins and Andrew Gilliam loses, or they both lose. Because I don't want Andrew Gilliam to win in Florida and Stacey Abrams to lose in Georgia, because then I'm going to hear like 4 years of the most basic feminists in the world tell me that, Andrew Gilliam won because he's a man and Stacey Abrams lost because she's a woman. You know, Obama won Florida in 2008. He didn't win Georgia. Florida is just a different state than Georgia. So this is going to come down to the inches, and Florida is an easier race. So Andrew Gilliam has a structural advantage just because he's running in Florida. And, he's a very tall man who talks like this. And I believe he'll do very well. And I do not know. First of all, if I see a black, I need the next black elected statewide, the next black candidate who's running for statewide office to sound more like Cat Williams. I need a black guy who sounds black. And that's okay. I do not need a black guy who sounds like this to make white people comfortable with his blackness, although he is 100% black. I do not need that. I want a black guy who sounds black, and that's fine because black guys are awesome. And we can govern stuff and just elect us as is. Not like sous chefed and prep cooked for you.
Yeah. You would be too much of an outlier in that case. He's not
I want a black
guy
who talks about black people who sounds like he's about black people. And that's fine. And there's no shame in that. And not one who was pureed and cut up and sliced and diced in cubes to be palatable for the white palate. So Andrew Gillum's another guy who's, I don't know, policy-wise, he just doesn't talk about labor, organized labor, and he doesn't talk about black people enough for me. Because when I want a black person who's going to run for office, as a black person, I'm going to need them to talk about black communities, not their personal story. Telling, I don't want black people to grow up to want to be the governor of Florida or the governor of Georgia. I want them to grow up to want to be a good union electrician. Because you can make a community out of union electricians and carpenters and unionized construction workers. You can't really make a community out of of individual black governors.
No.
What you can make is a good Christmas card, because that's what we got out of our black president. So, Stacey Abrams, good. Andrew Gillum, fine, I guess. But if Gillum wins, I'm going to need Abrams to win. If Abrams loses, I'm going to need Gillum to lose. Or I'm going to have a bunch of white feminists who make a lot more money than I will ever make tell me how hard it is to be a woman.
They won't monopolize the narrative.
They will monopolize the narrative. That's what it is. And also, this is too extreme for Georgia. That's a bad look. It's a bad look when Republicans do it about Georgia. It's a bad look when Democrats do it about Karen Handel. Give me the too extreme for Georgia Karen Handel pick. So it's a bad look. Let's be honest. Make no mistake. We need extreme policies for a few reasons. One, there are no swing middle of the road. There are no Georgia moderates. All those Georgia moderates you think are moderate, they're really white supremacists. There are Georgia who want the order of white supremacy to continue, and then there are Georgians who wouldn't mind black people getting a fair share. And both of those are really immoderate positions, white supremacy or black people getting a fair share. Because the history of Georgia has never had that, except for a week. I was about to say a week when Maynard Jackson was mayor, and he was pressuring the IOC to allow the Olympics to come in and saying look, if we're going to do the Olympics in Atlanta, a third of the contractors are going to be black, or we're just not going to have it here. That was fair politics. Because he was just asking for a third. He wasn't asking for 80%. No, he was asking for a third. He was asking for a fair share. So that was the closest we had to justice for black Americans in Georgia.
And it didn't last long.
And that did not last long. That did not last long. And that is too bad for at least, some people in Atlanta who could have used some of those contracts ongoing. But we're going to go with Stacey Abrams for governor or bust. Next race. Let's do Josh McCall in House District 9. All right, so there are two House Districts 9. I don't know if I have the picture. I may have a possible picture.
McCall and...
Yeah. McCall. All right, so Josh McCall is actually a good guy. He talks about jobs. He talks about jobs and organized labor. He's running in a hard district. So you live in House District 9, work hard for McCall, because he's talking about labor and he's talking about unions, and he's not talking about reparations, which is what black people need, but he's talking about labor and he's talking about unions, which is, at this stage, I'm saying it's good enough. Good enough, fine. And he's running in a hard race, and he's actually moving the discourse. He's running in the same district. You might be lucky enough to be in these two people's district. Don Johnson. Can you give me Don Johnson also? Mm-hmm. Don Johnson's running for the state senate in that same district. That's a part of that same district. So you might have the opportunity to vote for both Don Johnson and Josh McCall. Don Johnson's running against a guy named Frank Ginn. Ginn is garbage, but he's also been elected in that district. He hasn't been tested, so we'll find out how Republican that district is if Don Johnson can make some moves. I'm hoping she can, because she's actually, once again, can talk about jobs, can talk about the racialized wealth gap. We don't agree on all things, but she can talk about jobs, she can talk about labor, and she can talk about black people, so we agree on enough. And she kind of gets it in a way, and I've seen her make the case, make the jobs case in mixed company. Right. So if she could talk to white people about how we need to get serious about labor policy, then that means, like wealthy white people about that, then that means she's actually like, worth a darn for now. So McCall, Don Johnson, good in my book. All right. So now Deborah Gonzalez. We have 3 Democrats who represent Athens: Deborah Gonzalez, Spencer Fry, and Jonathan Wallace. The districts are gerrymandered so that Deborah Gonzalez and Jonathan Wallace have hard districts to win, and Spencer Fry has the most Democratic. You could run a ham sandwich in Spencer Fry's district, as long as it had a D on the end of its name, it was going to win. So all you like, Spencer Fry have problems enough just because he could be out there talking about Che Guevara and like Castro wasn't that bad for black people, and like you could say all sorts of things in that district, and you'll still be you're automatically elected. Whereas Spencer Fry takes that district to be like the most generic white guy in the history of generic white guys. He's not out there. He's not out there pushing the electorate. And as a minority House member in Georgia, because we don't have a lot of Democratic seats in Georgia, your main job is actually to push the electorate. Because if you're elected, that means you're in a safe seat. And if you're in a safe seat, you're elected by black people. So I'm going to need you talking about black people and justice for black people and how we're going to redirect the political economy so that it like actually gets money to black coffers. Spencer Fry doesn't do any of that. Not in public. He's like, well, I wheel and deal in private, and I do charity in public through Habitat for Humanity. But in private, I do wheeling and dealing. No, we're staring down genocide. Like black males are staring down genocide, but
there's no private solution for that.
There's no private solutions for that. And I need you to actually make the case, because you're not going to pound down legislative, like you can't push legislation through unless you change the electorate to elect better legislators as a Democrat in Georgia. So I need you to be aggressive about changing the electorate, not just like saving your seat, which is the safest seat of the 3. Deborah Gonzalez, on the other hand, has a less safe seat and is running against Houston Gaines, who is a rube and has always been. I knew it in the first meeting I ever sat in with him, where I was like, well, the University of Georgia actually participates in the school and neighborhood segregation by the real estate agents they pair incoming faculty and administrators with. And he was like, no, you got to prove that. And I'm like, hold on, how do you not think the University of Georgia participates in neighborhood and racial segregation? You're an idiot. Or you're just patently dishonest. And it turns out he's just patently dishonest. At the time, all of these, white liberals who grew up with Houston, because he was a nice young man when he was at Athens Academy, were like, no, he's a fine guy. And I was like, no, he's an asshole. And they're like, no, he's a fine guy. And then it turns out he goes and when he runs the first time, starts backing Trump and all Trump's plays. And now he's just there's no difference between Houston Gaines and Brett Kavanaugh. They're the same dude. They're the same dude. They're the same dude. And if you don't see that, then you actually don't understand how America works. Or you like that dude, because Nancy Denson seems to like that dude. And a lot of you before, you came to Jesus about Nancy, thought she was your ally because, she was the first woman tax commissioner. Yeah. First women aren't exactly, the best in feminist politics. And to be honest, first men aren't exactly the best. First black men aren't exactly the best in race politics, too. So
They've had to step over a lot of people to get to be the first,
What?
which is very important.
You have to step out over a lot of people. You have to do some grimy things to be the first. I don't want to be the first black anything. I'll be honest. I don't want to be the first black anything. Because if I'm not, that means like I'm going to change the whole institution from what it was to what it is. Because to be the first black anything, you usually have to look like the last white something. To be the first black something, you have to have a lot in common with the last white that. That's why Barack Obama had a lot in common with Ronald Reagan. Even he said that. You guys just didn't believe him.
Yeah, I believe they met and they kicked it off pretty well.
Yeah.
They were friends.
Yeah, he was the first black Ronald Reagan. And that's not what I need in my politics. So usually to be the first woman, whatever, to be the first black, whatever, or to be the first black woman, whatever, or to be the youngest, whatever, you had to look a lot like the oldest, whatever. So Houston Gaines, he's a very young guy. The reason he's gotten so much traction is he sounds and looks like a lot of the older guys. So that's not... And you have to watch this with prodigies, too. Anytime you talk to prodigies, I've seen some scary prodigies. There are these videos on YouTube about these little white kids who are moved by the Spirit, and they're giving sermons at like 5 and 6 years old, putting forth some hellacious good word, but like they're doing it just like they watch their daddies do it. So like usually the first ones, the people who are the first whatever, or the young prodigies get that way by aping the worst habits of the older generation. So I'm suspicious. So yeah, Deborah Gonzalez, I had my problems with her before because she wasn't ready at the beginning of her last campaign. She talked about computer security as if that's Georgia's biggest issue. But then once she got elected and actually like looked around, she's very smart. She actually has spine. She sees that the government's got its hands in a lot of pots, and pretty much every aspect of your life is governed by policy. She said that, like she didn't say that before she was elected. I didn't think she knew before she was elected. But now that after she won the special election last a few months ago, she actually learned and like is saying that, and she gets it in a way that she didn't get it before. So Deborah Gonzalez, good on you. Plus she did some education work with her constituents. She had Mercer Barada on, who wrote a wonderful book called The Color of Money on the racial wealth gap to talk about the book. I don't know if she read the book, but she had Mercer talking about the book, which is a step in the right direction. So Deborah Gonzalez, fine. Spencer Fry, he's running in a safe Democratic district. He's also useless, or use little. Maybe not useless, but use little. Use insufficient. So less of a problem. Jonathan Wallace. Now he's an interesting cat because he's just been too lame too long, right? So like had I gotten Wallace when he was like 16, I think I could have given him the spine he needs. But you spend your whole life being nice to like mediocre white people, and like you forget how not to be nice to mediocre white people. And a lot of his district is mediocre white people, so like you could make them better. And the way to make them better is to give them the quality of political context, political and historical context, to make them a better electorate so that they can actually elect you while you advocate for, the communities who need justice in Georgia the most. So Jonathan Wallace, like I said, he's a minority legislator, not a minority as in he's like black or Latino or whatever. He's a Democrat in Georgia. So he's not going to be able to like ram policy through, but what he can do is educate the people. So I'm going to need him on WUGA, on the news, on the radio, making the case for like entire communities that are left out. And that's not necessarily like the middle income people in Watkinsville, because in Watkinsville, the median income, I want to say, is the mid $70,000, Watkinsville, Georgia. But his district also leaks into Athens, and Athens has a poverty rate that is between 32 and 38%. And the black poverty rate, which is like nobody, literally, you can't get data on it because people are scared to get data on black poverty in Athens. So they just do the poverty rate. and then the poverty rate with and without students, but not like the racialized poverty rate. And we know the unemployment rate's about 4 or 5%, which is, not bad, whatever. I'd rather have full employment, but 4 or 5% of the people looking for jobs can't find them. But we don't know, those are all poverty wage jobs. So black people in Athens work and are poor. Everybody works, black people are poor. Was what those numbers mean. And I don't think, and I don't hear Wallace talking about labor. What he does talk about is healthcare and paying preschool teachers, because his wife was a preschool teacher. I wish his wife was black, because then maybe he would talk about black people. But his wife used to talk about preschool. Was getting hosed on the preschool job market. So like now he's advocating for like real pay for preschool teachers. I too support real pay for preschool teachers. I also support real pay for everywhere black people work. They should get paid real money, and I think be unionized. So they have a say in their workplace. So Wallace, I don't like the way he uses the microphone. He doesn't use the microphone to change the voters into anything except people who would vote for him. He is, however, running against this guy, Marcus Wiedauer, who might be the laziest white man on the ballot. Because Wiedauer somehow won a primary, but I think you should vote for Wallace just because like he's at least like gathering people and getting them out to work, whereas Wiedauer is just a lazy candidate. And then, these people are just lazy. Lazy. So Wiedauer, I was going to not endorse Wallace because I need Democrats to have a higher standard, at least for advocating for policy. But I'm going to have to endorse Wallace because at least Wallace works. Wiedauer doesn't work. So if I'm going to have and, maybe he doesn't think he has to work. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Let's go to the next race. I've talked about Deborah Gonzalez, Jonathan McCall, Don Johnson, Tabitha Johnson Green. District 10 in Georgia could have been a wonderful race. There's this guy, Richard Dean Winfield, who was running, and he got labor policy right. He understood how you got to get capital in the communities. He was a wonderful candidate. Didn't work out for him because, honestly, the Democrats picked, the Democratic Party people picked this really, really basic Democrat named Chalice Montgomery. So she was an awful candidate, and then they didn't want any debates because it would come out how awful she was. And it turns out that, like, in the decision between an awful Democrat and a black Democrat who's also awful, this is Tabitha Johnson Green, they just choose the black people chose the black candidate because, if you're going to choose between awful Democrats, you might as well choose the black one. Which is kind of actually how I chose Janice Laws for insurance commissioner. So I suspect she's going to lose that race because if I'm choosing her because she's black, and I met Cindy Zeitlin, the white person who ran against her during the primaries. I met Cindy Zeitlin and was not impressed. So I chose Janice Laws just because she was the black one. I assume that white voters are going to do the same thing in the congressional election, and Josie Heiss is going to run away with it. So Tabitha Johnson Green is awful. Chalice Montgomery was awful. Richard Dean Winfield was awesome, except everyone was, too many people in the conventional Democratic Party were scared that, like, well, he's not going to cross over and appeal, in the illusion that somehow, like, a moderate is going to, one, do justice to black communities in Georgia, and two, win when the electorate's not moderate. The electorate's Republican. So you need to somehow go against, fight them on that, in the arena of freedom. This is one thing Republicans are very good about. They're very good about talking about freedom. So you need to be able to tie your policies to freedom. And honestly, healthcare policy can be tied to freedom, but not the way healthcare advocates are doing it. And this is people like Chalice Montgomery or Jonathan Wallace, thinking that you could somehow convince people that healthcare is more important than what they think of as their freedom. That's not going to work. People use their health to do things. They don't have health for the sake of health. They have health in order to do things. If they cared about health more than they cared about freedom, we would eat differently. There'd be a lot of different decisions made about the things. Health is a means for me to do things. Sometimes I'm more upset about my healthcare bill than I am about like my health ailment, because the healthcare bill like commandeers 60 hours of my life or whatever, or 2 months of my life in working to pay for the bill. And I'd rather spend that money doing things I want to do, like buying liquor and whoring around. Like, these are not safe things, but they're free things. I neither drink, and I'm happily married, so I don't do the other thing either. But like, you understand what I'm saying, that Democrats need to talk in terms of freedom, and if you're just running on healthcare, and honestly, if you're black and running on health, if you're a black electorate, you care more about freedom than you care about healthcare, like healthcare in Georgia right now, with the wealth numbers going what they are and with the labor market being what it is and not paying black workers, good healthcare policy is just palliative care. That palliative care is a care you get as you're dying. You can't make moves off of $9 and $10 an hour. So you're just like, even if you have the best healthcare in the world, you're just living till you die. So that's not freedom. So I need Democrats to talk about black people getting freedom, not just like healthcare or healthcare as a means to freedom. And until they get that, they're just going. The problem is enough white people in Georgia get paid that they only care about healthcare. They don't have to worry about getting paid because, healthcare bills are their major bills. And if they got their healthcare bill taken care of, they would have like thousands and thousands and thousands of extra dollars. Yeah. Black people.
There's no point in being healthy if like you're living in a cage. You need someone to unlock the cage so you can actually worry about your health, because you want to do things outside the cage.
You want to do things outside the cage. I tell people, black people, America's got a cover charge and a 2-drink minimum. Healthcare might get you at the cover charge, but you're still like very, very anxious when you're inside the bar, hoping the bouncer hasn't noticed that you haven't paid the 2 drinks yet. So you're always moving. So you're outside of the cold, but you're still hoping someone else is going to pay for your drinks. And I'm walking, and I don't want that anymore. I need not only to get in the game, I need to pay the ante. Like, I need to not only get in the bar, I need to be able to pay the 2-drink minimum to participate in America. Not just kind of be healthy, but at $10 an hour. Matthew, you have a brother in New York. Kind of struggling in New York, because New York's hard. It's New York. It's a fun place. You can go see Hamilton. You could do all the things, right? New York, you can go to Broadway shows. But how's he doing in New York?
He's struggling a little bit. He's struggling a little bit because you don't have enough money. You don't have enough capital. You don't have the social resources or the security to make the moves that you want to make. So you're just kind of sitting in your room sometimes like, I wish I had the money, but you just can't.
New York.
Yeah, but you don't have it. You don't have it.
So that's New York as a young black man. And it's very similar to Georgia as just a black, whole communities. You don't have the money to actually live in America. And healthcare doesn't do that. It just keeps you living but not actually being free. And I want black people to be free.
Yeah.
I want black people to be free. Martin Luther King, before he died, was talking about how he didn't want to integrate the restaurants just to have, like, if you can't pay for anything on the menu. And, this is why they killed him. There are these other people, Keatley, whatever. He's not aggressive enough. And Arthur Thornton, these are all guys expecting Stacey Abrams to carry them. That's not ever how this was going to work. That's not ever how this was going to work. I need you drilling down policy. I need Richard Keatley turning Georgia into a union state through his mouth, because he's a very smart guy if he ever actually like made the arguments. But there's a kind of, next week's show is going to be on racial fatalism. But there's a deep-seated, but it's been taught, racial fatalism, where there's this notion among both elected officials and the electorate that black people will always be poor and destitute. So the best we can hope for is symbolic victories. We'll always be poor and destitute. And if you look at some of the reading gaps, apparently illiterate. And there's nothing we can do about it except like give palliative care. That's just not the case. This is a politically contrived problem, and there are political solutions. So I'm going to need my candidates to actually advocate for the political solutions to black degradation so that we can be free. Not just, robustly healthy so we can play football for you, but actually free. That means have the income to participate in civil society and have our own organizations and be paid as employees and employers. And that's going to come from policy. So what else? Oh, you guys should know about some amendments. Look, these amendments get on the ballot for a few different reasons, a few different ways. The amendments get on the ballots because your Republican legislature puts them on the ballot because they don't want to put their name on them. They might be good ideas, but the Republican legislature wants cover. These aren't propositions. There's no way to get anything on the ballot through like a proposition system. So these will all be by the legislator. So your Republican legislature will put these things on the ballot. They're all kind of garbage. Just some of the garbage is less garbage than other of the garbage. So if you don't know, go ahead and read, make your own decision. If you don't know what it is, I'm thinking about yes for one and no for the rest. There's going to be a thing called Marcy's Law about, victims' rights. Black people. Victims' rights campaigns usually just end up with more people who look like me in jail. I read the law. It looks like it's just about notifications, but a lot of the aspects of the law are already in the state in the statutory law, and we'll put it in the Constitution. And I'm not for amending the Constitution for things that we can do at the statutory level. So let's just keep it in the statutory level and fight our fights there and keep the Georgia Constitution as it is. So one I'm not even sure about. I'm probably gonna vote no on all of them, except maybe no on all of them, except maybe one and maybe five. Usually bonds I vote yes on, but anyway, vote no on all of them, except maybe one and maybe five. Those are decisions you'll have to make on your own. I'm gonna vote no on probably both of them. And by the way, next week we're going to be talking about racial fatalism and how much is trafficked on the notion that black people will always be poor. Like Matthew said about the poor will always be with us. Apparently Georgians think that about black people. The black poor will always be with us. But they don't have
the
to
Negro
be
problem.
With us. The Negro problem.
Yeah.
The black poor will always be with us. They won't always be with us. They were constructed by us, and they can be fixed by us as Americans. So that's what I'm talking about. And if you like what I'm doing, like I said, I had technical problems last week. I would have put the show out there last week, but I had to buy some technical solutions to fix my technical problems, and technical solutions take money. So if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.thefunkyacademic.com, kick down a little bit to support this habit I have of trying to give the people the political education they need to be the kind of people they're going to be, or we need to be to make Georgia whole. Because here's the deal. The racial problem holds all of the other problems in Georgia politics together, right? The depression rates are through the roof in Georgia, and that's white and black, diagnosed and undiagnosed depression, because of all the lying people have to do to avoid the racial problem. So if we address the racial problem, people will be able to be more honest with themselves and their lives. You got white women pretending that they're not sending their kids to a white flight school and then having to tell themselves that they're good because they recycle and go Democrats because while I don't want my daughter to go to school with Jamal, I'll vote for Stacey Abrams, hoping that she won't put my daughter in school with Jamal. And that's a problem. It's for me, and it should be a problem for us. And once we actually deal with that problem, we could actually be made whole, and I think depression rates will go down because I think people will have a better relationship with the truth. Because nobody's free if everyone's lying to each other, because then you're in defense against the truth. And I think there's a lot of lying to each other, and we've kind of institutionalized it through manners. So, yeah, that's the show for this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you like what I do, please kick down. And next week's show is going to be on racial fatalism and what that does to our politics and our aspirations and the goals we set. Take care. Bye.